I've always told myself that evidence doesn't lie. People do. People lie, dodge, try to hide the truth. But evidence? They never lie. Or was I wrong? The case started in the middle of the day. I was at the precinct, going over case reports, when Captain Reed burst into the office. "Maxfer, let's go. Murder at the Starlight Hotel. Got a suspect." I put the papers aside and stood up. "Who's the victim?" "Brian Wilkes, entrepreneur. They found him in the room next door with Daniel Rivers covered in blood." "Did he confess?" Reed grimaced. "Says he doesn't remember what happened." "Classic, huh?" When we got there, the hotel lobby was tense. The receptionist was behind the desk, pale, nervous, like she'd just been pulled out of a bad dream. On the third floor, there was a real crime scene. The body was lying by the window. There were no signs of a struggle, but there was a strange bloody palm print on the carpet. "Looks like an easy case," Reed muttered. But something told me it wasn't that easy. Daniel Rivers sat at the metal table in the interrogation room. His hands were clasped together, his nails digging into his skin, and his gaze roamed the walls as if he were looking for a way out. I sat down across from him, opened my notebook, and looked at him over my glasses. "You were in the next room. Your shirt is covered in blood. What happened?" He inhaled and exhaled sharply, as if preparing to jump into icy water. "I heard a noise," he finally answered. "A sharp, loud noise, like something falling. And you decided to check it out?" He nodded. "Yeah." I went out into the hallway, looked around. The door to Brian's room was open. I looked inside and Dashi swallowed, as if replaying the scene in his head. And what? He was already dead. Reed, sitting in the corner, snorted. "So you decided to go in, touch the body and get covered in blood?" Very convincing. Daniel looked at him with desperation. "I just wanted to check. I don't know why I did that." I leaned closer. "Did you see someone in the hallway?" Daniel shook his head. "No. When I came out, there was no one there." I made a note in my notebook. "Why didn't you call the police right away?" He looked away. "I was scared." Reed slammed his palm on the table. "Scared? You're a grown man." Daniel pressed his lips together. I already knew how this was going to look. A man standing over a body, hands covered in blood. I squinted. "Did you have an alibi for the night of the murder?" "I was in my room. Alone." "No one saw you?" "No." Reed chuckled. "So we have a suspect with no alibi, blood on his hands, and a ridiculous story. Maxfer, it's obvious to me." But not to me. A few hours later, the case was officially turned over to the prosecutor's office. The evidence against Daniel was too clear. It was too clean. The entire crime scene looked like someone was deliberately steering the investigation in the right direction. But I had a nagging feeling that something was wrong. I went over the report again. Time of death, between 9 and 10 p.m. Cause of death, stab wound to the chest. No signs of a struggle, so the victim knew her attacker. I went back to the crime scene photos. Something didn't add up. That's when Reed walked into the office. "Maxfer, you're still working on this?" "The case is closed. We have a suspect. It's simple." I looked up. Too easy. But he just shook his head. "Get some rest, partner. Tomorrow all this will be forgotten." Except I didn't forget. 3 days later, there was another murder. 3 days had passed. 3 days in which I tried to convince myself that Reed was right. That the case was closed and Daniel Rivers was the killer. But early one morning, my phone rang again. "Maxfer, we have a problem." Reed's voice sounded hard. "There's been another murder. And damn it, everything points to the fact that Rivers couldn't have committed it." I froze. "Where?" "Same hotel. And the murder's almost exactly the same." I was already pulling on my cape as he spoke. "The victim? Thomas Kane. Lived in a room 2 rooms down from the first murder. He was found with a stab wound to the heart." I buttoned my coat and sighed. Then we had a problem. 15 minutes later, I was already at the hotel. The crime scene was frighteningly familiar. Same method of murder. Same placement of the body. The same carefully arranged evidence. Except now Daniel Rivers was in a cell. Reed paced around nervously, looking at me expectantly. "Well, say something, smartass." I looked around the room. The furniture was slightly displaced. There was an empty glass on the table and a half-smoked cigarette next to it. But most importantly, there was a note. A short message left on the nightstand. "Detective, you've made a mistake. Try again." I whined. Reed raised his eyebrows. "What's in there?" I showed him the note. He read it and turned pale. "What the hell?" It was personal now. We sent a note to the lab, but I already knew it wouldn't get us anywhere. The killer was playing us. "Is this a challenge?" Reed clenched his fists. "Exactly. And you know what the worst part is?" I gave him a hard look. He knew we were arresting the wrong person. Reed swore and pounded his fist on the wall. "So someone made us believe it was Rivers." "Yeah, and now that someone wants us to correct our mistake." We rounded up everyone who was at the hotel the night of the second murder. Among the guests were Lucy Hale, the receptionist who worked the night shift. Michael Harris, a guest who lived in the room across the hall. Julian Walker, the owner of the hotel. Each of them might have known something. I started with Lucy. "Were you on shift the night of the murder?" She nodded. "Yes. I heard someone walking down the hall, but I didn't pay much attention." "Did you see anyone suspicious?" She hesitated. "I think Mr. Harris left his room around 9 o'clock at night." I shifted my gaze to Harris. "What do you think?" He shrugged. "Just went out to get some ice." I glanced at Reed. "Still sure it's a simple case?" He grimaced. "Okay. What do we do now?" "I've been thinking. The killer wants us to dig deeper. So let's dig." I asked to dig into the victims' pasts. Brian and Thomas. Both killed the same way. What connected them? The answer came quickly. Both men once worked for the same company. Wallace Group Financial Holdings. I sat in the car, going through their files. "That's something," I muttered. Reed, sitting next to me, frowned. "Do you think the killer is connected to their work?" "Let me guess." I glanced at him. "Let's see if we have anyone else from the Wallace Group at this hotel." We ran the guest list. And we found a third name. Julian Walker. The owner of the hotel. He worked for the same company. I got out of the car and gave Reed a quick glance. "Looks like our killer set himself up for us." He nodded. Time to pay Mr. Walker a visit. Now the game had reached a new level. Julian Walker met us in his office on the top floor of the hotel. A spacious office with a panoramic window, a massive oak desk, and a collection of expensive whiskey behind a glass cabinet door. Everything about this man said he was used to being in control. "Detective Maxfer, Captain Reed," he said in a steady voice as he settled into a chair. "To what do I owe the pleasure of your visit?" I put the Wallace Group file on the table. "2 men associated with your former company were murdered in your hotel. Is that a coincidence?" He tilted his head to the side and looked at me with interest. "Coincidence or not, I had nothing to do with it," he replied calmly. Reed sat down on the edge of the table with his arms crossed over his chest. "You know what's interesting?" he asked. "Your fingerprints were found in Thomas Kane's hotel room." Julian tensed slightly, but quickly pulled himself together. "I visited him this afternoon, discussing business matters." "Is that a crime?" I squinted. "It's a crime to kill a man and leave a mocking note." Walker's eyes squinted slightly, but he didn't answer. "Do you have an alibi?" Reed asked. "I had dinner with Lucy Hale last night. She can confirm it." "We'll check," I nodded. "In the meantime, Mr. Walker, please don't leave town." We left the office. "He's lying," Reed said. "Of course he is," I agreed. "But we don't have hard evidence yet." We went to Lucy's office. If she confirmed Walker's alibi, we'd have to find a new suspect. Lucy Hale nervously rubbed the edge of her blouse as we sat down across from her. "Lucy," I began softly, "did you really have dinner with Mr. Walker the night of the murder?" She swallowed. "Yes." I looked into her eyes. "Are you sure?" She looked away. "Well, he came by my place at the beginning of the evening, for a few minutes. We talked. But we didn't have dinner?" She shook her head. Reed let out a curse. "So he was lying, then?" I nodded and stood up. "Thank you, Lucy. You've been very helpful." We went back to Walker's office, but his office was no longer empty. It was gone. Reed grabbed his radio. "All units. Check airports, train stations, highways. Julian Walker's escaped." I clenched my fists. He knew we were on the right track. But it wasn't over yet. The next morning, Walker was found. He had tried to buy a ticket for the night train, but the police had detained him. When we went into the interrogation room, he didn't look so confident anymore. "You're finished, Walker," Reed said, sitting down across from him. "Prove it," he whispered. I took out the note found at the scene of the second murder and put it in front of him. "Your handwriting." We checked it. He swallowed. This doesn't prove I killed." I stepped forward. "But we know you wanted to frame Rivers." He exhaled sharply and closed his eyes. "They betrayed me, stole my money. I wanted them to pay." Reed nodded. "Well, congratulations, Mr. Walker. You've just signed your own verdict." I looked at him. "You had the perfect plan, but you made a mistake. You overplayed your hand." He grinned. "And you, detective, you thought you'd caught the wrong guy?" I nodded. "It happens. But this time, justice was served. The case was closed. But I knew there was more to Walker than meets the eye. And this wouldn't be my last challenge. If you like this story, support me by subscribing to the channel. I'm putting in the effort for you, and your subscription helps me grow. Also, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion really matters to me.